All right. So thank you guys for joining me today. I apologize for being a minute or two late. I was working on getting some Moodle things set up and lost track of time. The first thing that we're going to do is go over the syllabus. So I'm Dr. Hartman. You all are in Circuits 1 online this summer. For what it's worth, my office is Nethkin Hall, room 211. I'll be in that office sometimes if you guys are around this summer. If not, you can contact me via email at hartman@lawtech.edu. And then I've given my phone number there. It incorrectly says that is my office number. It's actually my cell phone number because I will be teaching class from home. So if you need to contact me, you can always shoot me a text. Just be aware that I am an old man, which means if you text me after, say, 7:30 p.m., I have probably already started going to bed because I like to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not going to respond if you email me or text me at night. The emergency class disruption policy really doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense because we're already doing the class via Moodle and Zoom, but via Moodle and Zoom. Our course objectives in this class are to learn a whole heck of a lot of material about the analysis of electrical circuits. We are going to be dealing with only linear systems in this class. I know that probably doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot to you guys right now, but it will a little bit later on. The official textbook for this class is Engineering Circuit Analysis 9th edition by Height, Kimmerly, and Durbin. Technically, there's a 10th edition out that is available. I would not buy that particular textbook, not that there's anything wrong with it. But if you go to Google and you type in CADULABY, the first link here is for a free online textbook. Never seen this before. Proceed. There's a free online textbook available by the authors, Fawaz Ulabi, Michael Maharbaz, and Cynthia First from Berkeley, University of Utah, and University of Michigan, respectively. It is a great textbook, in my opinion. It has roughly the same material as the textbook that we're supposed to be using. However, it is entirely free, which is why I highly suggest that you get yourself a copy of it if you need a textbook to follow along with. Textbook isn't particularly required in this class because I am recording all of these lectures and will post everything on my YouTube channel. All right, so going back to the syllabus here. If you need testing accommodations, please let me know as soon as possible so that we can get things sorted out. The official class attendance policy is given here. I understand that there are students who are going to be taking this class asynchronously. I am perfectly okay with that. So just work with me. Academic misconduct, your behavior is kind of irrelevant as long as you're not coming on Zoom and yelling and just being disruptive, you're going to be good. With regards to cheating, I don't think there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of opportunities for that to even happen because of the way that I do my exams and all that kind of stuff, which we'll talk about in a moment. Homework, all of the homework in this class will be set up using WebWork. Unless we have any late adds, you should all already be assigned to all of the different WebWork assignments. Let me pull up WebWork here really quickly just to show you what I've done. So I have a new homework set opening up for every lecture except for today's lecture. And you, or at least I can't see this on my end, but what my intention is that our first homework assignment will open up on Monday, and then it will be available for you all to work until Thursday evening at midnight. After Thursday evening at midnight, the homework set will still be open, but you will receive 50% credit for anything that you complete after that due date. And it will stay open at that 50% credit until the end of the quarter. So effectively, realistically speaking, you have until the end of the quarter to get all of your homework assignments turned in, but if you want to get full credit for them, you need to complete your homework assignment within 3 days of it being assigned. So I'm doing this so that when people are asking me towards the end of the quarter, oh, is there anything to do to increase my grade? You should have been doing your homework the entire time. And we'll get to that in a moment. Right. So just to be clear, the homework sets are already set up for all of you. They are, generally speaking, due 3 days after they are assigned. So if it's assigned on Monday, 1, 2, 3 days later is the 8th. So it's due on the 8th at midnight. If it was assigned on Tuesday, 1, 2, 3 days later is the 9th, due at midnight, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's set up for 50% scoring after that 3 days of time to work on your assignment. In-class assignments. So after pretty much each lecture, except for this one, a brief set of problems is available to work on Moodle. It says that they're to be worked during the remainder of the class meeting time as a group effort. So what I mean by that specifically, I can set up breakout rooms and all of that kind of good stuff if you guys would like to utilize them. I will, generally speaking, hang out on Zoom after I finish the lecture to answer any questions you might have about how to work the in-class assignment. Or any homework problems or anything like that. These assignments are due before our next class meeting. I might play a little bit fast and loose with that just because on some days, like on Monday, that means your assignment would be due for Tuesday, but on Tuesday, your assignment would be due for Thursday, et cetera. That's a little quick, so I might just make it due 2 days later or something like that to give you guys a little bit more time, especially for the students who are taking the class asynchronously due to internships and stuff like that. So I'll figure that out, and the due dates will be clearly posted on Moodle. Now, these in-class assignments are really a participation grade, okay? So what I mean by that is that they don't need to be complete, nor do they need to be correct. It's great if they are both complete and correct, but it is not required. What their purpose is to keep you guys actually working on things and to encourage discussion between you guys and myself after a lecture to help identify what topics you're struggling with. All right, exams. There are 3 exams given during this class. All of the exams are closed book and closed notes, and will utilize the Respondus lockdown browser. So that means that you are going to have completely and utterly mandatory a working webcam in order to take your exams in this class. Okay. That's just a solid mandatory thing, no way around it. That's how I'm choosing to do the exams in this class. The Respondus lockdown browser effectively takes over your computer to where you can't tab out of anything, you can't open up any new windows or anything like that. And it will also record you while you're taking your test and flag behavior. So if you pull out a cell phone or something like that, it uses AI to identify those things and sends me a notification. So it's a way to discourage cheating and all of that kind of stuff. Okay. So you will be required to submit a digital copy of your exam work to Moodle within an hour of completing your test, or you will not receive credit for the exam. Okay. So I want to look at our course Moodle page here really quickly now that we're talking about tests so that I can show you something. So the first thing that I want to show you guys is that I have already uploaded all of the review materials for all 3 exams in this class. So you could arguably start studying for things now. If this is not your first time taking the class, you'll be familiar with at least some of the concepts. Another thing that I want to show you right now, I only have set up the student work submission portals. If you can see here, there are actually 6 of them for exam 1. So because people are taking this class asynchronously, because people are working at jobs and stuff like that, I actually give you 6 different times to take your exam, okay? So you could choose to take it, so exam 1, when we see, it'll open up on June 26th, and you can take it at 2 p.m. during normal class time. So you would have from 2 until 4:30 p.m. I give you an extra 30 minutes to work on the exam because you have to redraw the circuits and all of that kind of stuff yourself because you're not being given a paper copy that has them on there. So it's designed to be a 2-hour test. I give you 30 extra minutes because you have to draw the circuits and stuff like that, okay? So you have the option of taking the exam from 2 to 4:30 or from 5 to 7:30, or on the following day, same times, 2 to 5:30, 2 to 4:30 or 5 to 7:30, same for Wednesday afternoon and evening. So there are 6 different times that you will be allowed to take your test, which means I have to create 6 different versions of each exam. It's very time consuming and all of that kind of good stuff. So this is as flexible as I am willing to be on the exam dates. I already have built in 3 different days for each test and 2 different times to work with your level of preparedness and your work or vacation schedules. So this is how it's going to be for all 3 tests. So before I talk about other things, does anybody have any questions about the exams in this class? All right, nobody seems to be saying anything or typing anything into the chat. So let's get back to the syllabus. I believe I've explained exams sufficiently. The weighting of the grades in this class is as follows. Homeworks are worth 20% of your grade. That's 2 full letter grades. So you are really shooting yourself in the foot if you do not do the homeworks. If you turn in every single homework late, which I would not encourage you to do so, but that will still allow you to get 10% of those points back. The in-class assignments are worth 5%. Exam 1, exam 2, and exam 3 are all worth 30% of your final grade. And whichever exam you do the worst on, I will reduce its weight to 15%, which means if you are doing all of your homeworks and you're doing all of the in-class assignments, as long as you don't make a 34 or less on one of the tests, it is mathematically possible for you to make an A in this class, okay? All of the homework assignments and in-class assignments are weighted equally. We utilize a standard 10-point scale. I don't anticipate that anything will need to change on the syllabus, but I reserve the right to do so. Boilerplate emergency notification system stuff, COVID-19 policy system stuff, and counseling services. And then we get to our tentative course schedule. So I already have all 3 exam dates set up here. Monday, June 26th is your first exam. Monday, July 17th is your second exam. And Monday, August the 7th will be your third exam, and you will have a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday option for all three of those tests. And also an afternoon and evening option as well, or 6 different times that you can take your tests. All right, so that's everything on the syllabus. Once again, any questions whatsoever before we move on to actual circuits related things?
Super quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you said that we have to submit an online, like, our work for the test. Does it have to be, like, on an iPad, or can it be on paper or on a tablet? Like, how?
So what I am looking for and how I have it set up, this is a fantastic question, by the way. Let me see if I can pull that thing up really quickly. So I have these set up to only accept PDF documents. So that could be a picture of your paperwork, or actually it probably would not be good to do it on a tablet or anything like that, because I think Respondus might freak out because you're using a different computer. I'm not 100% sure. My preference would be you work it on paper, because it's set up to expect that, and then you scan those documents either using your cell phone as a scanner or an actual printer / scanner thing. Save it as a PDF and upload it to one of these submission boards.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, to build off of her question, so I also use a tablet, Samsung tablet, and I take everything down on there and save it as a PDF. I mean, would it be okay for me to like use the tablet to do my stuff on it, or no?
Well, so you literally just said that you do everything on there, which means if you were doing all of your work on a tablet, that means that you would have access to all of your notes, which would be unfair to everyone else. So blank sheets of paper need to be what your exam work is done on. Actually, I'm going to explicitly say that because it would be far too easy for people to cheat, send each other files and things like that if you were doing things on tablets. So you need to use plain white sheets of paper, good old paper and pencil, that kind of stuff in order to take your tests. And you're going to be recorded while you're doing it, just to be real clear.
All right, that makes sense.
Any other
I have
questions?
a question. Whenever we go to scan our test, you say we need to leave the camera on, correct? Or
Scanning,
I took
calculus. So when you're taking the tests, your webcam has to be on, or it literally won't let you in to take the exam on Moodle.
Okay, but whenever we finish the test, we close out and we get out of Respondus and then we scan it, or we have to scan it before the time runs out?
No, get out of Respondus and scan it. So me giving you an hour is probably pretty generous for getting stuff in, but I think that's a reasonable amount of time to, take pictures, format it into a PDF file, and then get it uploaded. But yeah, not inside of Respondus.
All right.
Yep. And I am well aware that sometimes Respondus can be finicky, which is why I gave all of you my cell phone number, so that if you're trying to take the exam on, let's say, Tuesday afternoon, and for whatever reason Respondus just freaks out, you can always shoot me a text and I can try to help you figure things out. I want to be clear, I am not tech support or anything like that. So my general suggestion is going to be to restart your computer and then try to get back in. But if needed, I can delete your attempt so you can start over and stuff like that, and set you up to have a little extra time to take that into account. So anything else?
Yeah, one more. So when we're setting up our webcam for Respondus, do you want us to point it down at our scratch paper or like at our faces?
So it's going to ask to see like your working environment, which would include your scratch paper and all that kind of stuff. Because I believe like I have it set up to where you'll literally pick up your computer or your laptop or whatever it is, or your webcam, and it's going to look for your face. It's going to look for, I think you're going to have to show it some form of identification. And then you're going to have to rotate the camera to show that you have a clean work environment that only includes, you know, your paper, your calculator, and your writing utensils.
All right.
Quick, another question. To download Respondus, is it like something we can look up? I've never used it before.
So I'm going to put a practice test here on Moodle shortly that'll force you to download it in order to take it. I say shortly, sometime within the next week or so, it'll be a little like 3-question thing. And that practice test is going to be set up the exact same way that your regular test would be, so that you're familiar with the protocol, so to speak, of taking the test on Respondus.
Perfect.
Anything else? See what's popping off in chat. Will a standard camera on a laptop work? Absolutely. Yeah, you don't need an external webcam or anything like that. Your forward-facing laptop camera should be fine. Anything else? A good testing environment. A bedroom, a quiet bedroom would definitely be good if you have one available, a local library or something like that. But effectively, you don't want family members coming and talking, dogs and cats interrupting you, things like that. So wherever you think you'll be able to have 2-ish hours of peace and quiet with a stable internet connection should work as a reasonably good testing environment. All right, last call for questions before we move along to circuits related things. All right. So let me open up my PDF annotator and open up a blank sheet of engineering paper. Oh, I want 12 sheets. Sorry, I thought I did this earlier, but the program isn't open. And all right, so just to be clear, everybody sees a blank sheet of engineering paper now, right?
Yes, sir.
Good deal. All right, I'm going to mute myself for just a moment because it's going to make a noise when I convert my computer over to tablet mode. Okay, so what we are going to be talking about today is basic circuits terminology. So really all I want to do today is to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. Because if we're not, things are going to get real terrible real fast in this class. Okay. So I'm going to begin by introducing what I'm going to call a generic circuit element. Okay. So this generic circuit element is going to look like this. It has two terminals, which I'm highlighting here. And these terminals are what allow us to make connections to other elements. The majority of circuit elements that we are going to deal with in this class will be two terminal elements like this one. However, some commonly seen elements like transistors and operational amplifiers have more than two terminals. In fact, operational amplifiers, which we're going to talk about 2/3 of the way through this class, are actually 8 terminal devices. Okay. So whenever we have multiple elements, it's useful for us to label our elements. So I'm going to call this element A, and then I'm going to use my terminal to connect another element, which uncreatively I will call element B. Like so. So whenever two or more circuit elements are connected to each other, they form what's called a network. So a network is simply an interconnection between two or more circuit elements. And we will also have a thing called a node, where a node is a point of interconnection between two or more circuit elements. So for this particular 2-element network, I'm going to identify my node like so. All right, so I've simply just put a red dot here, and we'll talk about why I'm using colors and all that kind of stuff in a moment, okay? So I'm about to do something which is going to seem possibly a little odd to you guys, because I've defined a node to be a point of interconnection between two or more circuit elements. But I'm going to extend this node down until we hit element A, and to the right until we hit element B. And the reason why I'm allowed to extend that node up to the elements will be a little bit more obvious after Monday's lecture, when we talk, or actually next Tuesday's lecture, when we talk about the concept of resistance. Okay. So for now, just bear with me that I am allowed to extend a node all the way out till where I hit a circuit element. Okay. So if I were to connect more circuit elements, I would wind up creating more nodes. So I could put an element C here. I could put an element D out here. And then I could just connect all of these elements together like so. And now I have a system that contains many nodes, right? So I'm going to go ahead and identify those nodes. And I use different colors to do it for reasons that will be obvious in just a moment. So this particular network contains 3 nodes, right? So we have that first node that we identified here. We have our second node here, this green node, and then down here we have a third node outlined in blue. So if I have 3 different colors on my diagram, that I know at a quick glance that I have 3 different nodes. Well, successfully identifying the number and location of nodes is a very integral part of many circuit analysis techniques, which is why I like to use different colors. It lets me see very quickly how many nodes I have, where they're located, and all of that kind of good stuff. All right, so now we're going to start investigating the way that our elements are connected, right? So if we look at elements A and B, we can see that there is a single point of interconnection between them. And there are no branching paths, right? So there's no other route between element A and B if we look at this node right here. So this is what's called a series connection. Oops, excuse me. So in a series connection, we have a connection between 2, and I'm going to underline this, circuit elements. With no branching paths. Now, the reason why I underlined the word 2 there is because this is really just our definition for series connections today. As we learn a bit more about how circuits behave, we are going to expand our definition of series connection. But in order to do that, we have to have a very good understanding of what's called Kirchhoff's current law, which we're going to talk about next Tuesday. So for now, let's say that we need a connection between exactly 2 elements where there are no branching paths, which is, again, what I've described here. Now, if we look at elements C and D, we can see that they share a connection at their top terminals, which is the green node, and they share a connection at their bottom terminals, which is the blue node. So this particular configuration, where the top set of terminals are shared and the bottom set of terminals are shared, is what's called a parallel connection. So a parallel connection is a connection between 2 or more circuit elements where both sets of terminals are connected to the same node. Actually, let me rephrase that slightly, because I don't mean that the green node and the blue node have to be connected to each other. So connection between 2 or more circuit elements where both terminals are, let's just call it shared, which is the language I've been using. All right. So how would we describe the connection between elements B and C? Anybody have any thoughts?
Are B and C in series?
So B and C are not in series because there is a branching path off to D. Okay, so that's what I mean specifically by having no branching paths, because there is a path that branches off that node right here that goes elsewhere. These two elements can't be connected in series based on what our current definition is. So they're not in series. Are they in parallel?
I believe not.
They are not in parallel, because while they do share the green node, element B is connected to the red node on the left-hand side, and element C is connected to the blue node on the bottom. So they don't share both sets of terminals, which means they're not in parallel. So elements B and C are not in series, and they are not in parallel. That's okay. Like, what I asked you guys effectively was a trick question. In my opinion, during the Engineering 120 series, not enough time is spent explaining that sometimes things aren't going to fall into one of those two simple boxes of series connections or parallel connections. It is perfectly reasonable for a connection to not be series and not be parallel. In this class, we are going to learn how to combine resistors forming equivalent resistances, or combine elements and form equivalent elements that will allow us to treat things as if they were in series or in parallel, even if they aren't, but it's not required that it fits into one of those two boxes, okay? So thank you for your response. I greatly appreciate it. I like to ask questions. I like to make sure that you guys are engaged and paying attention. So I very, very much appreciate you answering the questions. All right, so what I would like to do really quickly here is to look at an example. Okay, so I'm going to go to a different page. We're going to come back to this one in a moment. And I'm going to draw a network. And then we're going to answer a few questions with that. Okay. So I'm going to start with an element A here on the left-hand side. I'm going to put an element B here up top. And an element C here on bottom. Let's put an element D like so. Do I post the notes on Moodle? I don't, because for the most part, I don't really use notes anymore. I've taught this class pretty much every quarter for the last 6 years. So I just kind of make up circuits as I go. That being said, I do record all of these lectures. And I will post the lecture video to Moodle. Here is E. I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you guys. I'm going to put a diagonal element here. Let's call this F, and it's going to be connected from here to here. This will be G. And then finally, over here on the right, we will have element H. Like so. And I want us to answer following 3 questions. Question A. How many nodes does this network contain? Question B. Which of the elements are connected in series? And question C. Which of the elements are connected in parallel? Okay. So before I start working on things, do any of you guys want to volunteer a guess for any of these?
I got an answer for A.
Okay, so what's your answer for A?
5 nodes.
5 nodes. I agree wholeheartedly, right? So I'll go ahead and identify them. We have this node in the top left. So I'm just going to call that 1. We have this node here. So that'll be number 2. This guy will be 3. There's number 4. And then this big guy on bottom is all 1 node. So that'll be number 5. So our circuit, or excuse me, our network contains 5 nodes. Wonderful job. So based on our definition of a series connection, which of our elements are connected in series? Anybody care to venture a guess? Perfectly acceptable to be wrong here. Somebody is unmuted and making a lot of noise that does not appear to be answering the question at hand. C, A, and B. All right, so you're not wrong. I'm going to say that A and B are connected in series, and C and A are connected in series. And once we learn about Kirchhoff's current law, we will then be able to see that C and A and B are all connected in series. But for the purposes of today, I'm going to break it up into these 2 series connections instead of 1 larger series connection. All right, which elements are connected? Okay, so B, E, and D, are they connected in series? So let's answer that really quickly, okay? So B, E, and D are not in series because there is a branching path, right? So if we look at this node right here, for B and E to be in series, the path towards D couldn't exist. Similarly, for B to D to be in series, the path towards E couldn't exist, And for E to D, E and D to be in series, the path towards B could not exist. So B, E, and D are not in series. Let me draw this. Right. So the only series connections that we have in this circuit, based on our current definition of a series connection, are A is in series with B and A is in series with C. Okay. So which of the elements are connected in parallel? F, G, and H, absolutely correct. Okay. So F, G, and H are all in parallel because they all share the blue node and they all share the purple node. So somebody else tell me really quickly why element E is not in parallel with F, G, and H.
Because it only has one node in common.
Exactly right. So E is connected to the green node and the blue node. So it only has that blue node in common, which means it can't be in parallel with those other nodes. Wonderful job. All right, so you guys seem to be catching what I'm throwing here with regards to nodes, series connections, and parallel connections. So let's move ahead. So now we're going to talk about circuits, loops, and meshes. So if we go back to our original diagram here, I'm going to erase a couple of things because we're going to look at this circuit or this network from a slightly different perspective. So I have accidentally called this thing a circuit a couple of times at this point. So let me go ahead and give you what my definition of a circuit is going to be. A circuit will be any network that contains at least one closed path. Okay. And this idea of a closed path is what we're about to call a loop. Okay. So what I mean by a closed path is I could start from this node, go up, around, down, and come back over like so. And I have formed a closed path around the circuit. So effectively, I've started at this node here, gone through element A to get here, gone through B to get here, continued on along B, gone through D to get here, and continued along this blue node until I return back to my original starting point, right? So I have a closed path, and I'm going to define a loop to be any closed combination of nodes and circuit elements. Okay. So the path that I just described is one loop. how many other loops does this circuit contain? Two. Absolutely right. So our other loops would be this guy right here. So that's a closed path. We'll call that 2. And this guy right here forms a closed path as well. So there are 3 total loops in this circuit. And now I'm going to introduce the concept of a mesh. Being able to successfully label and identify meshes is also another important part of a few circuit analysis techniques that we're going to utilize in this class. Okay. So a mesh is simply any loop which does not contain a smaller loop. So if we look at our diagram here, loops 2 and 3 would be considered meshes, while loop 1 isn't, because loop 1 contains both loop 2 and loop 3. Okay. So identifying meshes is really pretty straightforward. We really just look for the smallest closed combination of circuit elements and loops, and that's going to give us a mesh. So let's wrap things up really quickly here with revisiting this example problem and answering a few more questions. So I want to know how many meshes does this circuit contain? And then I want to know how many loops does this circuit contain? Right. So I'm going to erase these guys right here. I don't want to have too many numbers going on. So how many meshes do we have in this circuit? 4. Absolutely right. We have this one, this triangular one, this triangular one, and then this one here. So 4 meshes, pretty straightforward. How many loops does this circuit contain? Well, the short answer is a whole lot more than the 4 meshes, right? So we have 4 1-mesh loops. If I'm not mistaken, we'll have 3 2-mesh loops. So let me illustrate those really quickly. So a 2-mesh loop might be something like this. So that would be one of the 2-mesh loops. We also have a 2-mesh loop that just encloses meshes 2 and 3. And then we have this 2-mesh loop that encloses meshes 3 and 4. So that's why we have 3 2-mesh loops. How many 3-mesh loops do we have? Just the 2, absolutely right. So we have this one. And this one. And then how many 4-mesh loops do we have? Just the 1 around the outside of the circuit. Right, so this loop contains all 4 meshes. So if we add those together, 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 is, if I'm not mistaken, 10. So this circuit contains 10 loops. Now, if I'm being honest here, our ability to count the number of loops isn't particularly important in most cases. Our ability to count and identify the meshes will be a much, much bigger part of this class. So anyway. All right, so you guys appear to have picked up on what I wanted to talk about today. So unless anybody has any questions, we can wrap things up today and convene again on Monday afternoon to start talking about actual circuit analysis things. So we're all speaking the same language, or at least I hope so we can move forward and start getting into the nitty-gritty details. So does anybody have any questions for me before we get out of here? So can I go back to the mesh definition? Absolutely. So a mesh is any loop which does not contain a smaller loop. Okay. So that's why we have 4 meshes in this circuit, right? So we have this mesh. Let me redraw it here. So this one right here doesn't contain any smaller loops. This guy right here doesn't contain any smaller loops, and so forth. But if we were to look at, let me erase this big guy on the outside. This loop right here, it contains both meshes 2 and 3, which means it can't be a mesh itself. Okay. I was also asked, do I post the lecture? Yes. So unless something has gone horribly wrong here, this lecture is being recorded on Zoom. So either sometime this evening or much more likely very early next morning, tomorrow morning, I will edit this video after Zoom finishes processing it and upload it to my YouTube channel. And then I will also post a link to the lecture video on our course's Moodle page. So you should be able to rewatch this lecture again by sometime tomorrow morning at the latest. Are there any other questions?
Dr. Hartman, will classes normally go for about an hour? Or are they going to go for the full hour and 50 minutes generally?
So generally speaking, I will lecture for about an hour. There are times where I will go longer. There are a few times where I will go shorter. The remainder of the class meeting is meant to be used to do the in-class assignments, but there isn't an in-class assignment for this particular lecture. With regards to the in-class assignments, I would prefer that you guys stay online to work them so that you can ask questions of me, but I'm not going to require you to do so. So realistically, about an hour for the lecture material for each class meeting.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's all I've got.
All right, well, I will hang out on Zoom here for another 5 to 10 minutes or so, just in case anybody else has any questions, but you know, you're free to log out whenever you feel like it. Hope you have a great and safe weekend.
Dr. Hartman.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Hartman.
Yes, sir.
This will be the only class lecture I'll be able to attend because I'll be in an internship. For the in-class assignments, will I just be able to submit them later, or I won't be able to work them during the class time?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the syllabus, it says that they're due prior to our next class meeting. But because like the Monday and Tuesday lectures are back to back, what I'll probably actually change that to be will be that they're due, you know, 2 days after the lecture, so that you will have plenty of, you'll have roughly 48 hours to watch the lecture video and then work on the in-class assignment, and, you know, shoot me an email to ask questions if you have any about things and stuff like that. So I'm absolutely happy to work with people who are participating in internships, co-ops, and all that kind of good stuff. You guys out there making money is absolutely great. So I'm not going to hold that against you in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Dr. Hartman. I appreciate it.
No problem.
On the topic of internships, will you be taking attendance for the class or?
Not really, because it doesn't make sense. Because so many students are going to be participating in internships, so they're going to be taking the class asynchronously. So attendance is effectively whether or not you turned in the in-class assignment is how I'm going to treat it.
Okay, doke.
Yep. No, so I have it set up to where the homework is due 3 days after the lecture. So your first homework assignment opens up on the 5th. And it's associated with the material that we are going to be covering on the 5th, and then it will not be due until the 8th. So I'm doing that so that, once again, people that are participating in internships and stuff like that have a few days to look at the lecture material, work on the homework, send me emails to ask questions, or, you know, pop into my Zoom office hours or whatever. So it's not going to be the next class period. It is 3 days later. And just to clarify, actually, that 3 days later is when, so after 3 days, then you hit that reduced scoring period, right? So if you can get your homework submitted to me within 3 days of when it was assigned, you get full credit, and then you have until really the end of the quarter to turn it in for half credit. The exams will be done on Moodle, actually, using the Respondus lockdown browser, which is going to record you while you take your test. That particular browser plugin type thing won't allow you to have any other windows open. If for, well, let's just leave it there. If for whatever insane reason it doesn't work out for you, we might entertain something else. But my hope is that I've done it this way for the past several summers. The Respondus lockdown browser should be enough because it records you while you're taking your tests and flags irregular behavior for me to look at and make a judgment call as to whether or not I felt you were working on the exam, or whether you were, you know, answering a phone call or doing something duplicitous. So that means that it is required of you to have a functional webcam to take every test in this class. Yep, so as long as you have a webcam that works, you're good to go. Not a problem.